Jason Santos, what's up?
What's going on?
Jason Santos, restaurateur, chef. What else? You
That's
were
about it.
a judge on TV shows, things of that nature. We were just talking about crappy food because you were mentioning the what's the name of the app again?
Yuka. So cool. Scan everything and tells you all about it, why it's unhealthy. Is it too caloric, too much sugar, additives, whatever the case. But it's really interesting to sort of really see what you're buying.
Yeah, and you just scanned. Melissa gave me a protein bar to eat, and you just scanned it.
Yeah,
You
it's
said
a 7
terrible.
out of 100, which I've honestly never seen something so low. I mean,
I'm really not shocked.
yeah.
Melissa's still learning. She's still learning. She's always asking me. She's like, "Have you tried this? Have you tried that?" Oh, I'm looking at. She'll follow people on social media who do like eating hacks or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
Like
and
biohacking and all that stuff.
No, not biohacking. I like the biohacking stuff. I'm like, what's cool with that?
Yeah.
But no, she'll follow like a heavy set social media influencer who's like, this is what I'm using. Remember the dude? What was the guy on Subway who ended up being a pedophile?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I know. I can picture him. I just forget his name.
So, hey,
yeah.
Do you remember that guy? You might be too young.
On Subway?
So he used to endorse Subway, and it was because he was really, really heavy set. And then he would basically go, and I think he'd go to Subway, I think 3 times a day, and have a 6-inch sub each day. And he lost a ton of weight because of that. And they made him a spokesperson because of, look at this. Jared. His name was Jared.
That's it. Yeah.
Look at this guy. Look how much, if you go to Subway, you're going to lose a ton of weight. It's because he was basically just not putting in the calories that he needed to maintain.
Irrelevant what you're eating.
Yeah. So anyway, this dude ended up being like a pedophile. He had like child porn on. He's in jail right
Like
now.
legit. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I interviewed him years ago, and I could tell from the second he walked in the studio that he was
a
not
weirdo.
a good
Sketch.
person. No, there's difference between a weirdo and not a good person.
Oh, okay.
And when he walked in, I was like, ooh, this guy is not a good person. He walked in, basically, he fell into a Subway sponsorship, right? He walked in, and you would think that the scientist who figured out the cure for cancer walked in the studio. Oh my God.
It was through the roof, his ego.
I'm like, bro, you ate Subway and lost weight.
Not splitting the atom over there, bud. You know?
Yeah. But Melissa follows like those type of influencers, and she's like, oh, this person's eating this and eating that. And I'm like, Melissa, you got to find something that you're going to maintain. Unless you have a finish line for this weight loss of yours, you got to find something that you're going to maintain for the absolute rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's all about consistency.
Yeah, I mean, this fiscal year, I'm down 30 pounds. And honestly, for any other reason, I'm just being more mindful. And I'm like, I used to go into those quick like fixes, lose 10 pounds, gain it back. But now I'm just trying to like overall be a little bit better. And it's like, you blink and a year later, I'm like, holy crap, I'm down 30 pounds just from like small changes,
Dude, if I was around that fried chicken all day too, I don't know.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it gets old quick when you're eating it all the time. If I never eat a piece of fried chicken again, I'd be just fine,
Let's start with some random ass questions before we get into your the ups, the downs, all that stuff. Something you wish you were better at.
I wish I was better at being a little bit more organized. Because I'm so frantic with all the restaurants and everybody needs a piece of me. I'm kind of all over the place, and I wish I was a little bit more focused.
Okay. Favorite quote.
Favorite quote, which is super cliche, but if you, I forget, I'm paraphrasing. Basically, if you love your job, you don't work a day in your life, and I think that's like on good days, I'm like, this is the best.
Mm-hmm. A skill you wish that you could have immediately.
I wish I enjoyed running.
Me too.
Yeah, I just hate it. I hate working out. It's like such a chore, but I just, getting in the gym is half the battle, they say. But I hate it. I'll never like it.
What do you do for your workouts?
Honestly, lately I've just been walking a few miles a day before work. Like I'll go 2.5 miles before work, and then I do some weights here and there. But like the truth, I just hate it. So I try to do things that I enjoy more. And walking with a podcast on, It's been good for me, so far, but I need to amp it up a little bit. I used to do Orange Theory for a really long time, but I'd get, smoked with an 800-calorie workout in an hour, and I'd just be laying in the parking lot for an hour before I could go to work,
Do you do like 10,000 steps a day? Is that what your goal is?
Oh, easily. 10,000 steps is like, I'll do 15. If I don't do 15, it's a slow day for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, some days I'm hitting 25, 30,000 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's easy when you really incorporate it into your life.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things that people do to kind of make it so they don't have to walk a lot. Like Moose has caught me. I'll park on the first floor of this building here, and then I'll walk up to the fourth floor.
Yep.
And then I'll walk in the building, and then I'll take steps all the way.
Yeah.
By the time I leave work, I'm at about 6,000 steps
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
And that's just like walking around here. Just instead of parking right next to the elevator, just park a little
Yeah.
further.
Well, I notice like days that I have a lot of office work, I don't walk anything. But days I'm in the kitchen, that's when I'll walk 25,000 steps. You know,
yeah.
it's crazy, big difference.
Favorite book?
Well, if I'm being honest, I probably haven't read a book since third grade, so I'd say Chocolate Fever maybe in third grade. I mean, other than cookbooks, I'll read a book or I'll start to read a book and get 10 pages in and just forget what I even read because my mind goes crazy. I wish I loved to read, but I just honestly I can't do it.
Okay. If you could time travel, all right, you can go to the past or the future. Where are you going? And you can't affect the past. So you're not going back. I always have to tell people this. You're not going back and telling yourself to buy a lottery ticket or whatever. You can just witness an event. Are you going to the past or the future, and what do you want to see?
I think I would go to the past, and I think I would go visit my grandparents when they were younger. I mean, they came over from Portugal, and my other grandparents came over from Ireland and started here, and I would love to just see that sort of journey. And, my wife is Vietnamese. Her family came here, and I'm born here, so I don't have that luxury of seeing the hardships and stuff. And I would love to just be a part of that and really see the struggle and how they became what they became, and just see that whole process.
Yeah, it's funny. My parents will tell me stories about how they grew up, and it's weird. I mean, now I guess you can compare it because, like, if you go to tell your daughter eventually stories of you growing up, she's gonna be like, "Wait, you did what? You didn't have this, and you had to drive a car, you know?" But my parents will tell me stories, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, you didn't have this, you didn't have that." They had they got a TV at some point in their life.
Yeah.
My dad grew up in a house with 9 siblings.
It's nuts.
9.
Yeah.
A tiny house. And I'm like, what did you guys do? And he was like, we would just go outside into the woods, into the fields, and entertain the hell
Yeah.
out of each other all day.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of as a child. I remember playing all these games in the woods and running around, and now, like, that doesn't happen. Everybody's on their tablets or phones. It's a huge difference, you know?
I have to watch my kids when they go outside to play in the yard.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know who's out there. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
before it'd be like, just be home when the lights are on and hope for the best, you know?
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Melrose, yeah.
Oh,
Born in Malden till I was 8 years old, moved to Melrose, lived in Melrose till I was 20, and then I, started living on my own.
Yeah, and then you, so did you go to culinary school?
Yeah, I went to culinary school. I mean, I graduated high school, and thankfully I knew at a very young age, I think around 7 years old, that I knew I wanted to cook. I always just knew. It's the craziest thing. People struggle to find out what they want to do in their life.
Yeah.
I've always been interested in food, so it was like such a easy transition to get into the culinary, so I went into culinary school and I graduated high school, and then 2 years later I'm like cooking in kitchens. It was kind of nuts.
Was it because there was a lot of cooking in your house?
Yeah,
or?
no, quite the opposite. I mean, Irish family is not historically known for great food or cooking, but when I was 7 years old, my mom and dad got divorced, and while they were kind of figuring things out, my mom was an EMT, and then so my grandparents would pick us up a lot for school, and they always had PBS on, so I would be home watching Yan Can Cook, Julia Childs, Frugal Gourmet,
Yeah.
and I remember being 7 years old with a pad of paper and like trying to write down the recipes and stuff, so it was really interesting, and I used to tinker in my grandma's kitchen when she'd be making like jarred sauce. She wasn't looking, I would put like dried spices in. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like 8 years old, but I just have always loved to cook. It's the craziest thing. People always are like, oh, I wish I knew. I always knew I wanted to cook. My dad was a Navy SEAL. My mom was an EMT.
Wait. Your
Yeah.
dad was a Navy
He was a Navy SEAL, yeah. He was Vietnamese vet, Vietnam vet, and yeah, it was crazy. So and a lot of my family are like state troopers and like really tough guy jobs, and I'm like, I want to cook. It was really kind of crazy, but I've always known.
Yeah.
Always known, yeah.
Did your dad tell you stories from back in the day?
He did. He was like really kind of weird about it. Like when I was in high school, I played a lot of paintball, and he was so dead set against it, like super anti-violence. And he, when he got out of the military, he sort of said that the government didn't treat him very well when he got out, and he was in for a long time. And he was very happy and very proud to be a SEAL, but just the whole government thing, when he passed away, like he didn't want, the military offers to come out and play the bugle and stuff like that, and he didn't want that. He just found out that he just felt like the veterans, were just kind of left aside.
Yeah.
And but it was cool, and we had a lot of stories, but he was like, he saw a lot. I mean, he was in Vietnam. He would tell me like, sadly, like they'd parachute in the middle of the night and wipe out a village and be home by morning. I mean, it was like really saw a lot of wars. So he was hit by a grenade, so his back had a lot of like shrapnel and stuff in his back. So pretty crazy, and I could tell he didn't really want to get into it because I would pry a lot. Because as in high school, I was I thought I wanted to join the military. I was watching Platoon and all Full Metal Jacket, was like really into it. And he's like, no, it's a really, really tough life. And he was proud, but he just didn't love it. I can't imagine. I mean, he would say some stuff that, like he would see babies, on the side, like just stuff like that. I think you see stuff like that, it has to mess with you. It has to.
And then you like come back. I've always said that. I'm like, it takes a special person to witness things like that.
Yeah.
Then come here and have, you're in a convenience store and have somebody like be frustrated because it's taken too long to wait in line.
Yeah. Yeah, ironically, he was like the most patient person after that, but he enlisted for it too. He chose to do it, and he chose to be a SEAL, and he chose to go to Vietnam, So, I mean, obviously he performed for his country, which is super commendable, but I think, what you think you're going to see and what you really see is probably pretty different, and especially enlisting is one thing, but enlisting in full-blown war, I mean, it's crazy, veterans for me are like just a super soft spot because I can't imagine like living in like the jungle and like not knowing. Like in the Vietnam War was really brutal. I've been to Vietnam and been in the jungle and gone to some of these places where there's foxholes and all these traps that were set. I mean, it's brutal stuff. Warfare has changed very much, but it's pretty crazy to see all that.
And you were born after, how old are you?
I'm just turned 49.
Oh, okay, so it was after Vietnam.
Yeah.
Was he still in the service when you
No, he was out for a handful of years. He ended up working at MIT, did a lot of work on laser guidance systems for missiles and stuff. So that's what he did. He transitioned into that. But he told me that the CIA approached him and stuff, and he was just over it, So. Yeah. But, laser guidance systems for the military, I mean, he's still, Draper Lab right in Kendall Square. They're still doing all that stuff. So he worked on the guidance systems.
That is cool, man.
Pretty crazy. And I'm like making hollandaise,
And what'd you say your mom did?
My mom was a EMT. She worked for the fire department. So, so they just have like really, in my eyes, like I make cold food hot. It's not that deep, and what they do is like really good stuff for society. So I joke about it a lot, but everybody, says, oh, food brings happiness. And it does. And I love it. But I just think what they're doing or what they did was just amazing stuff. And, so it's funny, state troopers, firemen, my uncle is a fire chief in Chelsea, like all this stuff. And I'm like, whisking in a bowl kind of thing. So really like, interesting.
A bad day for them is like somebody died.
Right.
For you, it's like we ran out of sugar.
Oh, I overcooked the steak,
Wow, that's hilarious.
So pretty crazy.
So now you start, you said you went to culinary school.
I did, yes.
And where did you start?
I went to Newbury College. It was in Brookline, and it was a small boutique school, which has since gone out of business, like almost every culinary school now. But I was 19 years old, went to culinary school. I got my associate's degree, so 2 years of schooling, and right out of school, I had the best experience. I went to work for Chris Lessinger, who was a James Beard award-winning chef. Mm-hmm. He had restaurants back in the day, Blue Room, East Coast Grill, Jake and Earl. So like right out of culinary school, I got to work for like this amazing chef. So I learned like quality food out of the gate because ironically I did my internship for the Marriott Hotel in Newton, and that was kind of the polar opposite. It was like stuff cut out of a bag and reheated, and it just so I was very young in my career and got to really be exposed to some amazing food.
Yeah, and is it like the TV shows and the movies where it's like crazy hectic in the kitchen and you're getting yelled at?
Yeah, well, back then it was. Yeah. Now, now it's, please, sir, would you be so kind to pass the shallots? It's like very different. But yeah, of course, I got yelled at. I got screamed at. Pans were thrown. I mean, that was a very old school mentality, which has since changed. But I love it. I mean, I remember going to work at the Marriott, and at the time I'd worked such long days, which now is, probably a 10-hour day. I remember like limping to my car because my feet were so sore, and I was like, who can do this their whole life? And 30 years later, here I am, but it's just super interesting, like to know nothing about food and then go to culinary school and just get all this information thrown at you.
Yeah.
And then to go into a restaurant. I mean, I learned more in a restaurant in 2 weeks than I did in 2 years of school. Right. I mean, I'm glad I did it, and it gives you a lot of the sort of science and theory behind things, like, why do you use cold water making chicken stock? Like, you just know that's how you make it, but I got to learn why, use cold water, stuff like that. So the science and theory behind food I found very interesting.
Yeah, and did he take you under his wing, like, because he saw you had a passion for it?
Yeah,
or-
I mean, I started off like working lunch, and doing a couple days a week, and I sort of proved myself and worked into dinner, and then I was on the salad station and worked my way into higher stations, saute and grill, and it was all wood fired, so it was really cool to like work on a wood fired grill, and your fire runs out at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. You learn very quick to never let that fire go out. So you learn the sense of urgency, and food is one of those things where you get instant gratification, good or bad. I send a plate of food to you, you eat it, you say right then and there, is it good, is it bad?
Yeah.
So I really learned to be humble at a very young age, because not everybody loves everything. It's like really interesting.
Did anybody ever come and complain about your food? And
Well, it's funny. I got to cook for Julia Childs once, and when I say cook for, it wasn't my restaurant, but I cooked her entree, and she said it was too salty. And I thought it was funny because, at the time she was ripping butts and drinking a ton, so like in my head, I'm like, how could it be too salty? Usually when you smoke, you need more salt, but it was really cool to cook for her, but it was really humbling because she was like an icon to me. I mean, I literally got into cooking by watching her show.
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, it's a little salty. And I was like, oh, I was ruined, but as a young cook, what I know now, I mean, you just learn. It's just the food there's so much information to learn about food, and just to evolve with it it's really spectacular to, just start simple making salad. And I was like, oh my God, we're putting balsamic on mushrooms. This is amazing, and just to evolve, it's pretty cool.
I know the Julia Childs show and the Yank, all the ones you mentioned, but the one I remember really getting into was Iron Chef America. Did you ever see that one?
Totally.
Dude, that show. You ever see Iron Chef America?
Of course, yeah.
Oh my God. It was BS when I really read about how they did the whole show, but at the time you're watching it on TV and you're like, they have 60 minutes to come up with food and a dessert from this ingredient that they just found out about. Come to find out that they're like, oh, by the way, it's going to be one of these 3 ingredients.
Right.
And,
I know how this show sort of works.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as quick fire as you think.
I was devastated when I heard. Do you know how the show really works?
No.
So before your episode, right? Let's say you're one of the chefs. They'd be like, "All right, Moose, it's gonna be." They'd give you like 3 different ingredients or whatever. It's gonna be one of these 3. We're not gonna tell you which one. It's gonna be one of these 3. So now you have time to create recipes for all of those things. So when it comes time and they lift it up, you're like, "All right, it's freaking ham. All right, let me go to my little recipe book and I'm gonna do this with a ham or whatever." So you have all your stuff ready, and you just have to you have to make it in the 60 minutes. But I guess even that's kind of if it doesn't come out in the 60 minutes, they give you a little extra time.
Yeah, I mean, basically you have a dish in your head preset, and you just insert that ingredient. If it's ham, then you add ham as an accoutrement, and if it's steak, well, that becomes the protein. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's still taxing for sure. I've done a lot of stuff like that. Being a contestant on Hell's Kitchen 14 years ago was a lot of stuff like that. But Beat Bobby Flay I did once, like 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
And it was kind of the same thing. Like you have all your ingredients, and it was like the secret ingredient is calamari, and everything that goes with calamari is laid out for you, kind of thing. So
that's where when I first saw him, I was like, B. Bobby Flay was like my 11 p.m. show that I'll throw on for Wednesday, and I'm looking at him, and I remember I told my sister, this is documented, I said, that guy looks like Jimmy Fallon, no? And she was like, he kind of does. You do look like Jimmy Fallon.
I've had a few people say that, which is weird because I don't see it at all.
Like you're in the middle of Jimmy Fallon and Mike Myers.
Yeah,
you're dead in the middle. And I remember I said, I know this guy. And don't they say where you're from in the beginning?
Yeah.
And I remember, oh, he's from Mass. That's where I know you. Small world. Anyway, sorry.
I mean, the thing with TV is it's like really cool, but there's a certain production value that has to take place, because if it's not interesting, then it's not good TV. So when I did that show, they had me on camera say that I lost before I even competed. And I was like, this is like really odd, and I was like, that's weird, So there was something like a little fishy about it. And I got asked to do it again, and I passed because I just
produced,
I don't know, and I can't prove that by any means, but I've never done TV where you say on camera like, oh, I lost, I wish I did better. I haven't even competed yet, I just found that to be a little weird, and I coincidentally lost. So, so
I'm looking at a picture of Jimmy Fallon right now. You do kind of.
He does look like Jimmy Fallon, right?
You do.
Wish I had his talent.
My actually, besides the Beat Bobby Flay one, my introduction to like food on TV, it was Rachel Ray.
Really?
Yeah, that was mine. I just thought she simplified a lot, like the 30-minute meals and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. When she was young, I used to
like Rachel Ray.
I used to think she was hot when she was young.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
yeah, come on, Rachel Ray in the kitchen.
No, she's going through something right now.
Yeah,
I
I
saw,
know. There's a lot of speculation with her. I
Something's
don't.
going on with her, poor thing. But
Some health
I mean,
issues
yeah,
or
she
something.
makes it. I don't know, 30-minute meals. Like people are busy. She'd rip out the the frozen vegetables, throw it on the wok.
But I never really saw what I didn't like. Whenever I saw the cooking shows, at least the ones I saw, I didn't like that they would go from like, you do this to the chicken, season it or whatever, then you stick it in the oven, and then they open the oven
And they
again,
pull
and
out.
they pull out.
Yeah.
It's completely
It's
done. And
perfect.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you're cheating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have food stylists, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
because when you're doing live, it's very different than obviously pre-filmed, because you can cut and edit and stuff like that. So it's really interesting, the food stylist and all the shows I've worked on. Like, even like being a guest on the Today Show, it's like there's 20 people in the back kitchen. It has they picked the most perfect basil in the history of basil. Like everything is perfection, and it's not real life, but it is good TV.
I had a friend who used to style for like commercials, like McDonald's and all the food, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and he was like, no, it's not. I said, what do you mean? He goes, what do you think, I'm just putting a hamburger together? He's like, no, you gotta put the cheese in this, you gotta spray it with stuff. He goes, you can't eat the food by the time we're done preparing
for those
it.
kind of commercials, half of it's not even real food. You know, they use like for ice cream you see on TV a lot, it's Crisco. They scoop Crisco because it holds. And something else, there was Elmer's glue they put in cheese sauce so it drips slow. I mean, it's not edible, and it's a ton of stuff like that, but
That's
pretty
funny.
interesting.
How did you get approached to do TV?
So my very first time on television, I did a lot of charity work for No Kid Hungry. It's a national organization that helps sort of prevent childhood hunger and gives them healthy meals and educates. And so I used to teach a lot of low-income families how to cook nutritiously and, shop on a budget. And because it was a national organization, they said, hey, we have this opportunity to be on a show on, basically it was a CBS morning show. It was called Chef on a Shoestring. And you have $20 to cook a dish. And so at the time, Martha Stewart was the resident chef on the show. And so that was my very first one-off. But getting into TV, was a contestant on Hell's Kitchen. It was like 14 years ago. They were doing an open casting in Boston. And it was something I never even thought of. Just didn't even really interest me at the time. And I was actually going to blow off this open casting. And a good friend of mine was like, no, you have to go. You have a good personality. And I went there and there was like 2,000 people at the Park Plaza Hotel in the Grand Ballroom waiting to interview. And I went in this room and there was 3 casting directors and I just insulted all of them accidentally and they just loved it. And it was like, big personality. And I blinked and I was on Hell's Kitchen. I made runner-up on the show. And that really opened the doors. I had a lot of people approach me for other stuff. And I really loved, my favorite part of being a contestant was not competing, was actually the production value. I just thought it was really interesting. I noticed like if I walked in the room first, the cameras in the ceiling would turn on me. So I was like, oh, if I walk in the room first, I'll get more airtime. If I leave the room last, I'll get more airtime. And, I would see an earbud in someone's ear and I could tell they were being talked to. So I really like played the game and it was really interesting. And I've, even now doing radio and TV, I just love the production. I'm so interested in how things work and I just think it's really fun.
That's so funny. When I watch, concerts or events and stuff like that, I'm always paying attention to just like that. More than what's on the stage or whatever. I'm like, if they did this, it would have been a little better or whatever. You know?
Like, they call them inserts where basically if you're doing a scene and, production doesn't think you got a clean line or something, you do inserts. So you're basically just talking to a mic and they insert it. And I can hear it from across the room when it's an insert. They'll show someone's back of their head and them talking. And it's like the voice doesn't match the room tone, So I notice all that stuff and it kind of makes me nuts.
In movies too, you notice that a lot. It'll be the back of someone's head, right? And they're like yelling at the person, but the head is perfectly still.
Right.
I'm like, oh, come on, man. At least
stuff like that. I mean, I really do appreciate the production value, but that's why I love Bar Rescue, because it's, out of all the TV I've done, it's the most real show, and it's very underproduced, and it's, they just take a ton of footage. They edit it, of course, but I enjoy it because it's like they set you off and you go and hope for the best kind of thing.
So that one, it's you go into a bar that's underperforming.
Yes.
And how much time do you have
we're there for 5 days. So and it's real. Like what you see in the show is really happening. So day 1 is what we call recon. We'll sit in a control room with cameras in the ceiling, and they don't know we're coming. And that, I used to watch the show, and I would always say, hey, if I knew someone was coming, why don't you clean up? but they don't know. So they're told that they're a finalist and that we're coming in to get some B-roll, some footage of the restaurant. So they don't know we're actually filming the show right then and there.
I see.
So they don't care because they know there's a chance they're not going to be on the show. So we do recon. We sit outside in a control room when we watch. We see them cook. Are they clean? Is there cleanliness, sanitation? Is the bartender drunk? Is the owner missing? And then we go in and we light them up. And then we come back the next day, and it's a scene basically called Safe Room, where we bring everybody in and we just go over the numbers and why are they underperforming. Is it because the owner's drunk every night? Is it because someone's stealing? And then we do what we call stress tests, is we fill the bar and we see how they perform. And it's sincere. Like, I need to see where the cracks are. Like, what can I fix for them? Is it the POS system not working? Is it, the systems in the kitchen aren't working? So we get to see a busy night how they perform, and we kind of figure out what the problem is. And then we renovate in 36 hours. We put big lights out in front of the restaurant, and they're working 24 hours a day. We renovate the whole entire bar in 3 days. Which is crazy because I've taken 6 months to open restaurants. I wish I had that team there.
Yeah, that's
But
crazy.
and then we do a relaunch, and we do a ton of stuff off camera that you don't see. We train them on the POS systems. We train them on the menu. We go over everything. We go financials with them. So we really do set them up for success. And I do love that about the show, is that it's super sincere. The only bad thing is if you start with someone who is an idiot, doesn't matter really what you do for them, they're still an idiot, So sometimes people fall in hard times. I've done stuff where, like, guys lost his mom and dad the same year, and he just lost his way a little bit and needed that spark reignited. And sometimes they're just idiots. They're just drunken people that don't care, and they just don't care, So
What do you think is the most common thing that people are doing wrong, I guess?
honestly, on this particular show is the drinking, I just don't understand. I've had buttermilk and bourbon for 8 years, and I've had a beer once the first year we opened. I had a beer. I had a good friend in town that showed up. I don't drink in my restaurant. I'm not a big drinker to start, but I would never drink in my own restaurant.
Right.
These guys sit at the bar and drink all their profits away, and then they get drunk and they start buying shots for pretty girls, and their friends come in, and they're like, I don't get how we're losing money,
Yeah.
It's a business. It's just the business comes first every single time, and that's what I find that they don't. They don't put the business first. They put their ego and the good time first. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, I've been coming to this bar for 10 years. It'd be really cool if I owned it. Let me buy it. And then they realize it's not all fun and games.
Right.
Everybody thinks, oh, being a chef, you cook food. I wish it were that simple. There's so much stuff behind the scenes and so much paperwork and all this stuff. But that's generally the rule of thumb, is they think they can do it. It's easy. How hard can it be to pour drinks? And then they have, no recipes. The people are drunk all the time. Nobody's showing up for work. The unsanitary food. I mean, I've seen some crazy, crazy stuff on this show. I mean, I remember being in a walk-in, and there was a crack in the walk-in. There was a mushroom growing out of it from all the spores and bacteria. I mean, it's just crazy. These people, they don't see it, and they're like, I don't know, I don't get it. Why are we failing?
Yeah.
Because I just filmed an episode where this guy. Bar opened at 6 o'clock. He had 5 beers and 5 shots within 90 minutes.
Jesus.
I would be naked in the woods somewhere, blackout, if I did that. And this guy's like, I don't understand. Well, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy stuff.
I think that's why a lot of people's businesses fail, because you get, I know a lot of people who love to work out and stuff like that, the martial arts. And they're like, I am going to open this as a business. And I'm like, okay, wait. You just want a gym that you can work out at whenever, all day, every day, or you just want a place to train with people, but you don't think about all the things that go into a business.
That's exactly the wrong equation for any business.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. Oh, it'd be really fun to own a bar. I'll hang out and talk all night and have a couple drinks.
Yeah.
But it's way more to it.
Hire my friends. Yeah. I think that's another big thing that people do wrong too, is which I'm not, if you might have a lot of super responsible friends, good for you. I know I have a lot of friends who I would never, I compartmentalize the people in my life. I'm like, okay, these people I'm good at working with.
Yes.
Probably couldn't hang out, outside personal life. These people I can hang out, and we're going to have a fun time when we go out, but I wouldn't bring them to this. Yeah. These people.
I never cross the line. I have no family, no friends work for me. Just because it often doesn't work out, and why even take that chance? Why even put yourself in that position?
Right. So what was the first restaurant that you opened up?
The first restaurant I owned, I opened a restaurant 13 years ago called Blue Ink. And I was, in my eyes, I was very young, kind of the same idea, like, oh, this is great. All of a sudden I started making all this money, and I was like, this is amazing. And I just was too young to be that responsible. So that restaurant lasted 2 years.
Yeah.
But it's the best thing that's ever happened to me because I learned from it. Like and I've never made the same mistake again. So
did you open it up with a partner, or was it just?
I had one partner, but it was like a silent partner. It was more of an investor, so I was fully responsible for it. But I worked really hard, and I was like, I'm making all this money, and I was like, oh, I'll buy myself a Porsche. This is great, and I'll do this. And I was just too young. I wasn't ready to take on the responsibility. So I mean, and thankfully it happened young in my career, so I learned from it. But ever since, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me because I've learned so much from failure that I never made that same mistake again, ever.
Why did you close it down?
It just was not, sales were great in the beginning, and it just started to dip. And part of it was I wasn't working as much as I probably should have, and I was like, oh, it'd be great. And I was traveling and stuff, and I just don't think I was managing it properly. I don't think I was mentally ready to take on a responsibility of that caliber.
Yeah. So after you closed that down, what'd you do?
So then I opened Abbey Lane, which is now Nash Bar. So it's the same business. I just flipped the concept. And with restaurants, like, in my opinion, every 8 or 9 years, you have to kind of revamp and up. You have to just kind of go with the times a little bit. So even though it's a different concept, that's been open for 11 years. So that was my first restaurant, Abbey Lane, Nash Bar. Then I opened Buttermilk and Bourbon in Back Bay 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I opened Citrus and Salt 6 years ago. And then I opened Buttermilk and Bourbon Watertown. It would be 4 years in August. And then I just opened Butterbird about 8 months ago.
So what lessons did you learn from the first one? The failure at the end that you were like, okay, I'm going to do this different now for the next one.
I mean, the one thing I've learned is you can't keep your eye on, keep your eye on the prize sort of thing. You can't look the other way. You can't not work. I mean, I work every single day, and it's a lot. And it's a ton of responsibility, and there's days I just don't want to do it, but I have to do it. And I don't think if I failed in the beginning, I would know any better now.
Yeah.
It's really made me much more disciplined with the business.
So how do you delegate your time towards each restaurant? Like, what do you go, okay, today I'm going to cook at this place, today I'm going to do overlook, like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's never the same, because a lot of times people say, oh, I want to come in and have you cook, are you going to be there Saturday? I'm like, I don't know yet. It's a day-to-day thing. I really, during the day is all the business stuff. I do all the emails and accountants and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then at night, I'll pick a restaurant to cook at. And maybe it's because there's a VIP coming in and I want to be there for it, or we have a private party that I need to be there. So I go where I think the restaurant needs me the most. And so that's where I sort of cook at. But it's different every day. I mean, I was in Watertown this morning because we have a new menu coming up, and I had all the opening order basically, and I wanted to check in all the food and make sure it was correct.
Yeah.
Then I'm here, and then I'm going to go back there and kind of finish up, and then I'm working at Citrus and Salt tonight.
So when you go to show up at a restaurant, do they know you're going to come that day, or do you just you just show up?
I mean, once in a while the manager will know. I'll say, hey, I'll be by at 3 o'clock, but I try to come unannounced.
Is that
strategic?
Disruptive?
I mean, look, the way I see it is, if everybody's doing the right thing, then there's nothing to worry about. And I'm like a chef. I have zero temper, like zero temper. I don't raise my voice. I just, I am slightly demanding at times for sure, but I don't have a temper, and I treat everybody very respectfully. And for me, it's like, do your job, and it's nothing to worry about. And oftentimes I'll say, if I don't come in and talk to you, it's because you're doing a good job. I keep my eye. The people that I don't necessarily think are doing a great job, I keep very close to me. As far as whether it's a server or manager. But the one thing, the hardest part of restaurants is people, managing all these people. I have 155 employees right now, and it's like, to manage all these people is really tough because everybody, it's case by case scenario. But the one thing I've learned is if you surround yourself with good people that are better than you in the areas you're weak in, it's a great sort of equation for success.
Do you think you'd be able to franchise, or not franchise, open in areas where you won't be able to go to personally? So, like, would you be able to open up a restaurant in Florida, for example?
I would say, in full honesty, right this very second, no. And I've had opportunities. I've been approached from Vegas, hotels and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't come from a corporate background. So the bigger you get, the more I've learned is you have to become more corporate. You have to have more systems in place and more standards in place and company-wide. Like, every restaurant ran sort of independently. Like, we'd use this fork in this restaurant and this plate here. So now it's like I'm really working on standardizing it. So we use the same forks and knives in all the restaurants. The plates come from the same company. So I'm working on structuring it a little bit more standard, a little bit more corporate, if you will. So ultimately I would like to do that, but I'm trying to sort of standardize the business right now where I don't need to be there, and I know it's the same. Because, you know, I still get calls, oh, we're out of limes. You know, I'm like, okay. So I used to take those calls and fix it myself, but I've just become big enough where I can't worry about the little things, you know, and I still do, which is a control thing, but I just have to put the right people in the right places, and it sort of works out.
Do you personally interview everybody who comes to work at the restaurant?
I interview all managers, and like, you know, whether it's a chef or sous chef or general manager, assistant manager, I do interview all those. But like servers, and like, I'm not interviewing a dishwasher per se. You know, like every restaurant, managerial wise, runs independently. There's a chef and a sous chef in every restaurant, a general manager, assistant manager in every restaurant. So, you know, I delegate a lot, and I need to. I'm running out of daylight I'm getting up at 6:30 in the morning, getting home at 10 o'clock at night. Like, there's only so much I can do in a day, so I have to relinquish some of that control.
Yeah.
Phenomenal cornbread at Nash Bar.
Thank you. It is really good. You know what's funny?
So
my
good.
wife
You've been
is
waiting
gonna
to say
die.
that.
Yeah.
My wife, it's my wife's recipe, actually.
is?
It's my wife's recipe. She makes it every single Thanksgiving, and she always jokes that she's gonna, you know, needs a cut of the profits directly into her bank account, you know, but
It's dangerous.
it's really good. It's like cream corn and cheddar cheese and jalapenos and corn. So it's like, it's not a dry cornbread.
No.
Some people love that. I don't like that at
no.
all. This is a really like cakey, soft, like
Yeah.
unctuous
And the butter is
cornbread.
melting up.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's good.
So the waitress was like, "You need to get it." I was working there. I had an event. I was like, "Nah, I'm fine." She's like, "No. You need to get the cornbread." I was like, "All right."
It is really, really good, but I would be lying if I took credit
so
for that.
good.
It's my wife's 100%.
I actually, real quick, I wanted to jump in. I have
Sure.
like a couple fun questions because when you mentioned, I actually was happy to hear you went to culinary school. So I'm gonna name 3 different types of areas of the world, cuisines, if you will, and you tell me either your favorite dish of that cuisine or maybe a favorite dish you like to cook or something you enjoy. Okay, we'll start off easy. Italian.
I mean, I love anything veal. Veal marsala is like one of my things. If I see it on a menu, I always order it. So that would be that.
All right, cool. Vietnamese.
So my wife is Vietnamese, and so I know a lot about the food. I cook a lot of Vietnamese. I've been to Vietnam. I make a lot of pho at home, and it rivals my wife's mom's. Like, it's I spent a lot of time trying to make this, but there's this dish called bun can, and I'm probably butchering the name, but it's a rice noodle soup with shrimp meatballs in it and shaved onion and green onions, and it's just so incredible. And there's another dish called bun sao. It's basically a Vietnamese crepe. It's got pork belly and calamari, and it's this like crispy crepe that you eat with greens and fish sauce and lime juice. It's pretty incredible.
Have you ever had pho?
I haven't, but I heard it's fantastic.
I've never had real fun.
Me neither.
I'm dying to. I've had like ramen.
Yeah.
I've never had pho.
Yeah,
I've
completely different country.
I had ramen. Like, I'm not a ramen guy. I didn't go to college, so I didn't go through that like eating ramen stage.
Well, that's like
and that's
top ramen. No, I mean like real ramen.
No,
like,
I've never been to like a ramen.
When you say
restaurant.
ramen, 9 out of 10 people are like, oh, I've had those packets. I'm
No,
like, oh my
no,
God,
no,
these
no.
people are dying. You know, the real proper ramen is, I mean, it's like saying apples and raisins are the same. You know what I mean? It's completely different. Completely different. Indian. I love, if it's made well, I love a good samosa. It's basically a pastry wrap with like peas and cumin and potatoes. And if they're good, crispy fried, that soft potato is killer.
Yeah,
Last
friend I used
one.
to work with, his mom would make them. She was from Pakistan, and he'd be like, "You gotta try samosa." I'm like, "What's that?" And he showed it to me, and it looked like an empanada.
Yeah,
Empanada.
yeah. It's
I'm like, how do you say it in English? Empanada. It looked kind of like that, and I'm like, oh, but it has potatoes in it.
I mean, that's you know, every country has a like everybody has a Colombian empanada, a Mexican empanada, or a dumpling. You know, pot sticker. Is it a gyoza? I mean, it's kind of all the same. It's just the own, you know, country's own version. Yeah.
Okay, last one. España.
Oh man, I mean, I love like tapas. Probably as simple as like really good Iberico ham, like, which is basically like a prosciutto, you know, like a Serrano ham, shaved paper thin with a little bit of tomato toast is like my favorite thing when it comes to Spanish food.
Is there a cuisine that you like? I don't want to say like you're an expertise in, but is there something you're like, I can do this eyes closed?
Honestly, Asian food, and I obviously Asian is a multiple continent, you know, so I mean, but my love for Asian food has always been, I know the most about, you know, Japanese food, Vietnamese food, Korean, you know, I love anything Asian. Like,
So where's the Asian restaurant?
It's on my list.
Coming?
It's definitely on my list. Yeah. So I'm taking a little break now. I'm pretty 5 restaurants. I got another book coming out. I'm like pretty exhausted right now, but I think next year I'm going to start to look to do something. But I definitely, an Asian restaurant is on my list for sure.
Would you do it like what would be your twist on it?
I mean, the one thing about my restaurants is the business-wise and concept-wise, they're all the same. It's all small plates. It's all everything's under $20, and it's all shareable. So each concept is, I picked up buttermilk and bourbon, dropped it, made it Mexican. Same business, So I would do like a small plate concept where you come in and order a bunch of stuff, and I'd want to do like a tiki bar, fun. I mean, my restaurant's like I try very hard to not be pretentious, and I just want to serve good food at good prices.
Korean fried chicken.
Yeah, Korean fried chicken is delicious. I mean, I would love to do something like a small plate Asian concept.
When do you have time? Do you come up with the recipes? And when do you have time to do that?
Yeah, so that's the irony of all this is the only thing I haven't relinquished full control on is I write all the menus for all the restaurants.
Okay.
We're changing the menu of Buttermilk and Bourbon Watertown next Tuesday. So I write the menu, I write all the menu descriptions, I do all the order guides, prep guides, I train all the cooks. So it's a lot. And when you have 5 restaurants and you change the menu twice a year, you're kind of always changing menus. So it's a lot, It's a lot. I have a book, a manuscript due for my next cookbook, which is going to be called Citrus and Salt, due June 1st. And I have literally hasn't even started it yet. So on Monday, I'm disciplined. I'm going to sit down and start writing this book. But it's a lot, You just run out of daylight.
How do you schedule your day? Like what's your morning routine?
I get up generally around 6:30. I spend a little time with my daughter before I go to work, get myself a coffee, and then I go. And usually mornings, 99% of my mornings are all business. It's talking to the accountant, the bookkeeper, whatever. It's just stuff that I'm not interested in, And then around noon, I'll generally, if I'm doing specials in the restaurant, I'll jump in the kitchen at noon, do some prep and stuff. And then maybe I'll have to go to a different restaurant, and then I'll jump on the line and expedite all night. But always, unless we're doing lunch, if it's a weekend, it's different. But Monday through Friday, if I work, it's always business, sitting at a desk, answering emails and whatever needs to be.
So when are you going to have time to start? Like, where are you going to throw in the book writing process for this whole thing?
Well, I don't have a good answer for you. I mean, on Monday, I'm off. I'm taking Monday off, so I'm going to spend a good chunk of my day. But writing a book, honestly, my very first book, I was super excited because I feel like as a chef, when you have a cookbook, you become taken a little bit more seriously. And I was like super into it. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. I just don't have the attention span, to do that. I'll be writing a recipe and I'm like, look, goldfish outside. It's just not my thing. And it was horrible. And I was like, I'll never do another book again. And 2 years later, hey, you want to do a book? I'm like, yeah, it wasn't so bad. I'll do it. And I did it. I'm like, God, this sucks, And then this book, I don't know why I said yes to it. This is like the busiest time of year for me. We're filming. I got new menu season. I'm like, no, I'll do it. It can't be that bad. And I'm like, God damn, why did I say yes to this? But it's great. And my beverage director at Citrus and Salt is a co-author in this book.
Yeah.
And because their cocktails are unbelievable, and I couldn't even hold a torch if I was making drinks at her level. So she's taken some of it, doing a couple chapters, a mocktail chapter and a cocktail chapter. So I'm pretty excited for this book. But man, it was like last month I was like, I'm going to start, And it's March 1st. I'm going to start March 1st. And I'm like, but I'm running out of time. I have to start on Monday.
What do you look for when you hire, your beverage people, your managers, all that stuff? Do you look for skills? Do you look more for passion? Do you look for a reference because, you worked for this chef and I love that person? How's that go?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first thing I try to find is work ethic because I can teach a lot, but I can't teach someone to be a good person. So the work ethic is the most important. Passion is really important. And I also look at their resume. If they've had 10 jobs in 2 years, they're not here to stay, and they're just more transient. So I look, if you worked at a place for 2+ years, then I know you're going to hunker down and work really hard for me. So that's important. But the teaching part, obviously, if you come with talent, that's a bonus. But really, nowadays, you get a good person, you can really teach them. Someone that's passionate, that wants to work hard and do the right thing. I mean, that's 90% of it.
Yeah. Now, when you go out with your wife for a dinner or a lunch or whatever, first of all, how do you judge the place? Second of all, what is your favorite all-time you went in, it freaking just blew you away spot?
I'll tell you, my birthday was this past weekend, and my wife took me to this little...
Wait, when's your birthday?
March 1st.
Me too.
Is it really? Yeah.
There you go. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
I've never met someone else with,
Yeah.
with my birthday.
Everybody's like,
Actually, that's a
Pisces.
lot.
I'm like, I don't know what that
Yeah,
means.
I was about to. And I was like, no, don't embarrass yourself.
I don't go out too much, and if I do go out, I like little mom and pop plates. We'll go to Dorchester and get a bowl of pho. It's in and out. I don't have to talk to the chef. I'm not taking pictures of people. I'm not like running through the kitchen. I just want to eat and go home kind of thing. But my wife took me to this place, and I it's called Amari. It's in Lexington, and like in my head, like Lexington, it was an omakase, which is basically like a sushi tasting. It was 15 courses. It was so freaking good that I'm like, I think I want to try to go again next weekend. It was incredible.
Really?
And I, never heard of the chef. He used to work for Jasper White at Summer Shack and worked at Uni in Boston for a bit. It I left there being like, God, if I could only make sushi half this good. I mean, it was incredible, and it was like reasonably priced, and it was great. And I love supporting like the little guy. This was 6 seats. It was a counter with 6 seats. That's it. They do 2 seatings a night. And that was probably one of the best meals I've had in years. It was incredible. I love sushi, and so.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, dude, you should go there one night. I mean, it'll blow your socks off.
I will definitely go. I went the last really good place I went with my wife. Well, like in Boston, because of course, freaking. And what was the place that we went to in New York that was fantastic? Sugarfish. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So good. But in Boston, it was this place called Wushin, something like that. And so we went, and it was omakase, the tasting menu. So they had the bar. So there was a couple, my wife and I, another couple, and then the bar turned, another couple. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4 couples total.
Yeah.
And the chef, by the way, Chinese, but amazing, amazing sushi. So he comes out, and they're explaining the dishes and all that stuff. And the couple next to us, the woman was Brazilian, and she's making conversation with the guy. I do Brazilian this. You got to come over my house and whatever. He's loving it. He's smiling at her and stuff. So they were explaining to us, hey, listen, when we come out with these dishes, just eat it the way we tell you. Some of the, like if you go to a regular sushi spot, you could like put your thing in a bowl of soy sauce, and it doesn't matter.
Put the wasabi in it or whatever.
Yeah, all that stuff. With this, they were with some of the sushi they gave us, they were like, don't use soy sauce. Just eat it the way it is. Eat it in one bite. They gave you all different instructions. So what was the thing that the lady did? She did a couple of things. No, the first time she took one of the pieces of sushi, she took her chopstick and cut it in half, and he looked and he said something to they had waitresses behind us who would, like, every time they bring it out, they'd explain what the dish was and stuff. He said something to them, and the girls come over and they go, we ask you that you eat it in one bite, don't cut the food or whatever. And I was like, oh, strike one for this lady. She's losing them. She went from strike 1 to strike 3. She's out for the game. When he caught her, I think it was eel. It definitely wasn't just a typical fish or whatever. He caught her, take it off her plate and put it on her husband's plate. Man, if looks could kill, this woman would have been dead.
Yeah.
He looked at her and he looked away, and for the rest of the meal, didn't even look in her direction.
Yeah.
He was pissed.
Yeah.
I loved it.
This place I was at, there wasn't even soy sauce. It wasn't even an option. And I walked in, and it's a white guy. And I'm like, what the hell? A white guy from Revere making an omakase. And I was like, what the hell did we get myself into? It was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, incredible.
What's the name of the place?
I have to look it up. I think it's like Arare or something. I mean,
Yeah, in Lexington.
Yeah, in Lexington, right
Okay.
on Main Street in Lexington. It was $180, 15 courses. We had A5 Wagyu, uni, caviar. I mean, it was bonkers, and it was like really creative. It was like nigiri style, So he'd make it right in front of you, drop it on a mat, and then you eat it, and then they make another one, drop it on a mat, and eat it. But it was like really inventive garnishes. Like he had, which normally I would roll my eyes on, but it was like, I forget what fish it was. Half the fish I'd never even heard of, which is awesome because it's exciting for me when I eat something I've never had. But he had like Dorito crumbs on it. And I was like, what the hell? Like, Japanese, what? And I ate it, and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. I would have never thought of it. But he had like charred broccolini in one of the nigiri. I mean, just the little garnishes were really inventive. Pistachio, like things that aren't, traditional. The fish and the rice were traditional, but yeah, it was absolutely killing. The last course was like, I don't know what they're called, but those things in Chinatown a lot. They're like shape of a fish. They usually have ice cream in the middle of it. It's like an ice cream sandwich, basically.
Oh,
but
yeah.
he made them fresh, stuffed it with chocolate. It was like a black sesame whipped cream. I was like licking the bowl. I mean, I looked like I was homeless. I was just like licking it. I was like, I love you. I love this place. Like, let's get married and matching tattoos and we'll move in together. It was incredible.
What's your take on the difference as a chef, the difference between like fine dining and like affordable cuisine that people can do? Because you do love the mom and pop places, but then you also do love something like omakase.
Yeah.
So is there an in between for you, or do you think we should always be gearing towards that high quality, unfortunately expensive food?
Yeah,
or is there a happy medium?
I mean, it's funny because I actually think of that a lot. I mean, for one, I'll start by saying, like, to me, good is good, right? Like a good tomato in August with a little sea salt is better than a bad steak any day of the week. So, like, good peanut butter and jelly, I'd rather have it than a piece of fish that's not fresh. So, I mean, to me, good is good. But I think when you go to a high-end place, I took my mom to Paris. I was just in Paris 3 weeks ago, and I took her to 2 Michelin star restaurants. It was like $1,500 for 2 of us to eat.
Jeez.
And it was unbelievably beautiful, and the service was great. But it was like, I moved my fork and the 6 people over here fixing my fork. Like, it was a little much for me. And I personally don't like that level of service. It was not pretentious, but it was just, when you're spending that kind of money, let me get your jacket, let me pour. I take 1 sip of water, they pour more water. Like, it was just over the top. And the food was beautiful, but like, I just don't need the bells and whistles. For me, like, good food. So I like in the middle, like, I like good quality food for sure, but I don't need the fluff that goes with it, because for me, good is good. Like a great bowl of pho in Dorchester will smoke some high-end meal that's not good. And a lot of times these high-end places, you expect a certain level of perfection, and when they miss the mark a little bit, you're paying all this money. So there's a lot more pressure as far as the kitchen and restaurant go. So I kind of like in the middle a little bit, but I also love down and dirty. Like, I love that stuff, like everybody thinks as a chef, I'm home shaving black truffles in my kitchen, I certainly have before, but for the most part, I just like good, and so sometimes I make fresh pasta at home and sometimes I don't. I think it just really matters on taste, and everybody asks a chef, like, oh, what do you like to cook? And it's like a mood thing. It's like saying to a doctor, hey, what do you want to cure today? It's like, It's just a mood. I'm like, sometimes I'm on a ribeye kick, and sometimes I'm over it. So it's a mood thing for me, and it changes. But special occasions, I definitely like to go out and have a nice dinner. My wife's, was great taking me there. But honestly, I just love simple for the most part.
Yes, yeah.
I just don't think my restaurants, like my staff and even like my family are like, you have to charge more. You guys are so cheap. I don't want to charge more just because I can. I hate that. I hate going to a restaurant, seeing $35 chicken dish. It's like, come on. It's crazy. So I try to really keep everything under $20. Even with now, prices are going out of control in restaurants right now. And, my beverage manager sent me the drink list, and it was like, it was a little too pricey for me. I was like, you need to figure it out, like whether we use a different bourbon or something, but not charging. We need to charge less. I want to give value. Value to me is super important.
Were you like, tell me, during COVID and like with the whole post TikTok stuff and all the influencer chefs now and all these people having a different form of like culinary on media, because back then it was just Food Network and PBS. We were seeing like chefs on like cooking shows, and now it's like all these people blowing up online. For you, is it refreshing, and have you jumped into that yet, or are you still doing your thing?
No, I mean, I'm a little more old school. I'll never get into the, I love to go through TikTok, but I think I've posted one video in 2 years. Like, it's just not my thing, For me, like, I have a social media manager. She's like, we have to film this video today, and I'm like, oh my God, I just can't. I just don't like it, but it's necessary. So I do what's best for the business, but when it comes to me and like my fault, I don't care. I don't care enough. I just care that the restaurants are good and they do well.
And last thing I just have to ask you, because it's been on my mind, the blue hair, man. I'm thinking I have to know what kind of music you listen to.
It's pretty funny. I'll tell you a little story about the blue hair. So that first show I was talking about, Chef on a Shoestring, the night before, I was 19 years old. The night before, I said, I'm going to dye my hair blue. And when I showed up to the studio, they were pissed. They were like, what are you doing? And I'll never forget this, but they said to me that the people in the South American markets aren't going to understand that. I was like, because I have blue hair, they're not going to understand it. But I'll never forget that, because it's still bizarre to me. But at the time, it was their highest rated food segment, like, ever. And it was like, oh, and so now all of a sudden I had blue hair, and it's like, 19 years old, I'm 49 years old. Like, how much longer can I rock this blue hair? And the funny thing is, all the men in my family are stone cold bald, and I'm the one that puts all this crap on my head, and I have a full head of hair. It's really ironic, but it's become my thing, and I get it. And it's nice because it's memorable, so it helps with business and notoriety. And if I want it to go away, I put on a baseball cap and nobody bothers me,
Yeah.
So it's good, but it's a blessing and a curse. It's a lot of work being beautiful.
Is it? am I hard to assume this is very like punk rock 90s?
No, not even close. I mean, if I had to pick one genre, I listen to house music. I love like
Dude.
rip roaring EDM.
If you said
Oh
like
my God.
Beethoven, I would have fell on the
Yeah.
floor right
You
now.
speaking my language?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I tell people that, and they're like, what? But like, I like one-offs. Like I do like Green Day. I used to listen to Maroon 5 a lot. But if I had to pick one genre, it's hardcore
dude.
EDM where your heart's beating out of your chest.
See, I can't handle house music.
I mean, I used to go see Tiesto in Vegas and all
Yo,
these
my God.
DJs and stuff,
I
day
can't
parties.
handle, I literally feel like I'm gonna pass out. Yeah,
I think it's different. There's levels to it. And I think when people think of like, immediately they think of like house or EDM, they're just like, like
Yeah.
it's not. There's so many different levels. Like, so many artists have collaborated. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of David Guetta and stuff like that, bringing in guys like Chris Brown and things like that. Start off with that.
Yeah, because if you go the other end, like Skrillex, I don't know if it's just hardcore metallic techno.
Yeah.
You gotta like ease into it.
I like David Guetta and Calvin Harris.
Start off with those guys, and then you work your way up, like the Tiestos. There's so many out there that you don't even know. Like, I'm like, I never even heard of these guys, but they're freaking amazing. Like Swedish House Mafia is awesome too.
Yep.
They're really good.
There's a guy in Paris or France that's Gassalfelstein. I don't know how to say his name. He's like huge in the EDM world.
That sounds
Something like that. Anyway, sorry.
yeah.
I just popped
I
in
mean,
my head.
20 years ago there was the five top guys kind of thing, and now there's so much.
There's so many.
Does
now.
Daft
Now
Punk fall in that category?
yeah.
No, they're like electro, right?
I think they
In a
sample a
way,
little bit.
Yeah. It's what it is, because now it's just so much more open. So there's like a 19-year-old freaking kid who's in his bedroom and is just like awesome at making beats, and you don't need to necessarily be a it's being an artist in a different way, but you don't necessarily need to be like learn how to play a guitar or a piano, so you could just mix beats and do all this stuff.
Why do you like it so much?
I just love the energy.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's exactly it. Just like you just want to like move your arms. It's so upbeat and fun, and just when that beat drops, man.
Yeah,
that's how I am. You see, not with like EDM house music, but like an artist like Tame Impala. Like I appreciate that his like construction of like beats and artistry and things like that. You don't know who Tame Impala is, you?
I've heard of Tame Impala.
So you're like looking at me, Blake.
I probably would. When you were saying it, I'm like, I've heard that name. I just can't match it to the song.
Yeah.
But in my defense, there are so many songs out there that I'm like, I know that song. And if you said name the artist, I would.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like smashes, like,
Yeah.
From recent smashes to like 80s, 90s that just like, I know every word to the song. But if you said name the artist, zero. Or if you made up a name and you're like, that's who sings it, I believe you.
Yeah,
I'd be like, sure, okay.
Because I'm not like, I don't listen to just one band. I like songs,
Yes.
So I like this song from Green Day and this song from No Doubt. I just like a little bit of everything. I used to listen to Pearl Jam a little bit. I just listen to obscure stuff. But yeah, everybody thinks like the punk rock thing, and not
I know
so
that's
much,
I had to go there. I was just curious, but
I mean, I love the Beatles. It's like I listen to like a lot of old school stuff
if
too.
Jason turns to me and he's like, I really love Beethoven and Mozart, I literally would have been like, absolutely
Like,
not.
no, you love Fall Out Boy.
Yeah.
So, have you ever gone to like a restaurant and been like, this is so freaking good, I gotta go to the back and talk to the dude?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it was this weekend. I like wanted to hug the guy, and invite him over to sleep over. It was amazing. But when things like blow me, and there's nothing I love more than eating something I've never had before. So, being in this business 30 years, you've kind of seen it all, eaten it all. So when I have something in a way, or if I leave that restaurant being like, I'm going to steal this, I'm going to take it, make it my own, and do my version of it, I get so excited because it's so fun. Because for me, learning about food, I learn more about food and eating in other people's restaurants than I do anyplace else. Traveling and eating out is the best thing for, creating and stuff like that. Just that inspiration, because when you cook the way you cook, you just know what you know kind of thing. So when you get to see other things, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
How's it evolved? Because when you started out, I'm sure it was like the food critic who wrote about restaurants in the paper and stuff like that. Which, by the way, I have a whole thing with like food and movie critics. I never take them serious.
Oh,
I never
how could
took them
you?
serious because I'm like, okay, that's like you could be into a movie that I'm not into, and I could be into a movie that you're not into. Why? Because you have movie critic in your title, does your opinion matter more than mine? You know, and the same with food critics. I'm like, I might just not be into that food.
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
20 years ago, if you got a bad review, you'd potentially be out of business, you know? And it was one person's palate would define the success of the restaurant, and that's it. I think food has evolved so much. People are much more educated about food now, and I love that. Now, before you'd serve beef, and they'd be like, great, now they want to know the cow's name, what's the cow's sister's name, what did it eat for lunch? Like, but I appreciate that because just people are much more into food now. But before it was one person. You'd get a Boston Globe review 20 years ago, and if you didn't get 2.5 stars or above, you'd potentially go out of business, and that's not fair either. You know, it's you're cooking for the masses. Let the masses be the judge.
How did that work? Did they call and say, hey, just so you know, Lorraine's coming in tonight to eat a...
No, you don't know. I mean, so yeah, I was a chef at a restaurant called Gargoyles in Davis Square 15 years ago, and you know, you don't know. But then we'd find out 2 days later, the Globe would call and fact check some stuff and be like, oh my God, that food critic was in. You know, what's going to happen?
So it's not like Ratatouille?
No. They're not sitting out there. But once in a while, you'd catch them. I mean, we used to, you know, I don't want to name her, but we used to put pictures up. Like when we'd open a restaurant, we'd put pictures up of this person because we would want to make sure if they come in, we catch them. So we make sure it's perfect, you know. But now it's different. Now it's, you know, the print paper is not as powerful as it used to be. So
well, now it's like food influencers.
and social media and stuff like that. So it's
also,
fine.
It's also amazing on the other end though, because I've seen so many people they save their businesses. They're like, you know, they'll post like I own this restaurant or I own this like burger joint, like we're just not getting any traction. Like a food review guy will go and talk about it, and then they have lines around the corner. You know what I mean? So it can also work in their favor.
Well, I mean, I think it would be very arrogant to think that everybody likes everything I cook. It's a very subjective business. You might think it's salty. You might think it needs more salt. So what we hope for is we hope that most people like it, you know, because it's impossible to have perfection. It's just unattainable, you know, and I get it. I mean, I cook for a holiday at my house, and half the family would be like, this is amazing. The other half, I could use salt, you know? So it's like you're never going to appease anyone. You just hope that most people enjoy your food, you know?
How's that work with the food influencers? Because I feel like some of them legit will go to a place, and even though you're seeing them doing this and all that stuff, they'll give an honest opinion. But then there are the other ones who I feel are like, hey, listen, I'm going to be going to your place. If you give me a little bit of money, we can do some sort of partnership.
I get those emails all the time. I'll get a DM on Instagram. Hey, would love to dine at your restaurant March 15th, and in exchange for dinner, would be happy to do a few posts. I personally hate that stuff. My publicist will be like, no, they have a good following. It could really help. I'm like, okay, but I just think it's crazy. It's like almost a weird level of blackmail.
It 100% is, because if you say no, now they're like, fuck him. His food sucks without even going in. But then if you say yes, now you're obligated to do it for free.
Yeah, you're at their mercy. And it's like $200. So you post, you know, now there's all these like micro influencers. And all that. I get 1,200 followers, and it's like, huh? Like what? I have to give you free dinner so you can post to your family? You know, it's like, I don't know. But I also know that this is how it is. So I'm a little reluctant, but I am slowly changing and more accepting of it, because we get the bloggers, man. If every single day I get emails, every single day, it's crazy. And obviously, if someone's huge, we're happy to. But if I said yes to everybody, I'd be out of business.
Another thing I'm noticing is that a lot of more restaurants are cognizant of just when the customers are going in to eat that they're gonna want pictures and stuff. So where did my wife and I go? We were in the Seaport. We went to get steak. One of the steak places.
You went to Burger King.
We went to Burger King, yes. No, and as we were walking out, we're like, oh, let's take a picture. Immediately, somebody ran over and was like, I'll take a picture for you. Here, come over here, do it. Like they knew exactly where to position it. So are you guys more cognizant of things like that now?
Well, I'll give you an example. So I had Citrus and Salt in Back Bay. It was 142 Berkeley Street. Our lease was up. The landlord was not willing to renew the lease because they were doing a full renovation of the building and turning it into healthcare. So it's becoming a minute clinic. So I offered double rent to stay. He's like, nope, we're going medical. We don't want to deal with all these like retail stuff. So I had to move. So I moved to the Seaport. When I had bought Citrus and Salt, it was, in my opinion, a very beautiful restaurant, very feminine, pink, flowers everywhere. And I would walk to the restaurant and I would see all these 25-year-old women with their phone out, not even eating. They're just taking pictures of everything.
Yeah.
So when I moved, I said, you know what? Let's give them what they want, and we made this citrus and salt 2.0. It's stunning.
I've heard it's beautiful, yeah.
Stunning. And like, did I ever wake up say, "Hey, I can't wait to open a pink restaurant"? I never did. But it's not about me, and that's the one thing you learn in the business when you're younger. You cook for yourself. You have, maybe some more arrogance. I don't write menus for me anymore. I don't open restaurants for me. It's about them, the guests, and that's the most important thing. And give them what they want, and that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
And so that's what I gave them.
Are there companies that design restaurants? Like when you go to open a restaurant, how does it work? Who do you like, okay, we have to reach out to this company and give them input, or do they say, what's your menu? Okay, we know how to lay it out.
There's a little bit of all that. For me personally, if we're doing a full renovation, we need to hire an architect, often an engineer for the HVAC system, and then we hire a designer. I mean, I would love to take credit for everything, but I shop at IKEA in Kohl's. Like I'm not, that guy. So I'll say I would love a cool tree here, and I would love this to be neon, and they'll come back with 5 neon options, 5 tree options, and then we sort of hone it down. But no, I mean, designer does what they do,
Yeah. So from when you go to open a restaurant, from when you pick the location to opening, how long does it usually take?
It depends. I mean, I'll give you 2 examples. So Citrus and Salt was a failed restaurant that we took over. So the guts of the restaurant were already there. We did it in 3.5 months. We opened. Buttermilk and Bourbon in Watertown was sand, literally sand. We built it from the ground up. That was a year and a quarter to open because it's a full build, everything, So it depends. And, there's benefits to both. If you open a restaurant from scratch and build it, you get exactly what you want, where you want it, how you like it, but at a cost. I mean, I'll give you an example. Buttermilk and Bourbon, granted, it opened 4 years ago. I spent $2.1 million opening it. Deal. Citrus and Salt, I flipped the restaurant for $600,000. So there's benefits. But, if I could do it over, I would have the kitchen. The kitchen's too big for what we're doing. It's just unnecessary. I would have more dining room, less kitchen. But when you buy an existing restaurant, you get what you get. So it's, both are good, both are bad.
Have you ever heard of, well, the only one they have, I think, open right now is MC Perkins Cove in Agunquit?
No.
Dude.
Never heard of it.
Where did you pull that from?
I know, it's like so obscure.
Well, because when you were talking about that, my mind started to wander to these 2 guys, Mark and Clark. All right, this is years ago. I went to a restaurant. It was called Arrows in Agunquit.
I've heard. Yeah, I know Arrows.
Okay,
yeah.
I was devastated when I heard that restaurant closed. But that was the first super crazy. It was the first time I went to a restaurant that I walked away and I'm like, I have to tell people about this place. Yeah. And I went with my ex-wife and my current wife right now. To this day, she's still like, we have to find a place that will beat that.
Yeah.
But that place was amazing. These 2 guys, Mark and Clark, and their whole thing was they were open seasonally, and they would travel during the off season to different regions, and wherever they went, they were like, boom. Yeah, this is where we're going to come back, and this is going to be our theme, and they changed the menu daily and all that stuff.
And I think if I remember correctly, they grew their own produce and stuff.
Everything.
They had a farm.
Yeah. And it was I'm not a tomato guy. I still to this day, I'm like, if those guys, whatever was on the menu, I would try it just to challenge myself because I'm like, I don't know how they do it, but whatever it is, I freaking love it.
Yeah.
And one day they literally had tomato slices on the menu. I'm not a tomato slice guy. I like ketchup. I like things with tomato in it, but just like, I'm not a tomato guy.
Yeah.
That was part of what was on the menu for an appetizer. I had it. I loved it. But anyway, so they had that restaurant. They have MC Perkins Cove, which is in Agunquit. That's another one that's still open. They had one in Boston called MC Spiedo. Does that sound familiar? It's closed also.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was going to say, do you ever do that where you travel and you're like, I'm going to change my menu up for this season to
I mean, it's the inspiration. I mean, when when I eat something amazing, it like you said, it just is in your brain.
Yeah.
It's just, it'll never go away. One of my favorite meals I've ever had in my entire life was back, I don't know if you remember Clio, was at the Elliott Hotel, which Uni is there now, but it used to be Clio's. Ken Orange, who owns Copa and Little Donkey and Toro.
Okay.
He had this super fine dining 10-course tasting menu, and I remember like literally crying myself to sleep because it was so good. And I was like, I could never duplicate this. And he was a huge inspiration to me in my younger career because I just found him to be so incredibly inventive, and his execution was like, in my eyes, was flawless. And I still think about it like 30 years later. It's crazy.
Who do you, or where do you think people get to that level where they just it's just it's like in sports. Like there's the players, there's the stars, and then there's like the legends.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
what do you
no,
think
exactly.
separates the legends from like the really, really good chefs out there?
Well, I think I think our food is fantastic, but I also know if I could cook 7 nights a week, I could create, I could just keep going and evolving and getting better and better. But now I'm do other things. I'm the business part. So it's stuff. So I think a lot of times these restaurants, you have a chef who is only the chef. He just cooks. That's it.
Yeah.
So you're much more laser focused when it comes to food. But I think that's why it's so important to hire good people that can sort of execute your vision. Because it's difficult. What's in my brain doesn't necessarily translate on paper to someone else. If I told you this is what I'm thinking, your translation of it might be completely different. So it's important.
So do you give them all these are the recipes you're going to do for this restaurant?
Yeah, so when we do a menu, I'll write all the recipes, we'll train everybody, and we put them in a book, and every time you make it exactly like this. So consistency is really important in a restaurant. There's nothing worse than going to a restaurant that you love, and then you go the second time, and it's completely different.
Yeah.
Because it's just inconsistent. So consistency, I think, is very important in restaurants.
And there's a head chef at all your spots?
Yep, they're in charge of everybody. They hire the kitchen, they fire the kitchen, they write the schedules, they do all the ordering and stuff, so...
What type of personality do you need to run a kitchen?
This may be a negative thing. I don't like weakness. When I find someone to be like really kind of not confident, I can smell it, and I just think own it. Like we all make mistakes, right? So make the mistake. There's no problem making mistakes, but when you kind of like don't own it and you make excuses, that stuff really gets me because I screw up all the time. I make probably more mistakes than anybody else, but I own it and I'll fix it and I'll never make it again.
So when you go to hire a chef, how do they need to have worked somewhere else big, or
I sort of have this system in my brain. It's a 3-part system. The first is an interview to make sure we're going to get along. Like I'm going to work with you a lot. I need to not hate you, So that's really important. And then the second one is that you cook for me. I need to make sure your food is good. I need to make sure your pedigree is proper, where you came from. I'll call references. And then the third part is we need to prove to you, why do you want to work for us? It's not one-sided. It's important that if you take the job, you want to work here, not that you have to work here or you care about a buck. Like work here because you want to. So it's not just one-sided, show me how good you are. It's like we need to show you why you want to work here as well. So it's not just one-sided for me.
When they're cooking for you, are they cooking, you're like, here's my dish, or are they cooking?
No. Well, I'll say you have a walk-in, just make me a dish. Make me whatever you want. Use any ingredient we have here, have at it. Because that's like the Iron Chef style, right? Here's a whole bunch of stuff. Go cook. And for me, that's my best food is when you say, I got sweet potatoes and raisins and mayonnaise, go make something. Like I tend to make the best food when it's like quick fire like that versus you can do whatever you want. What do you want to make? Then it's like, oh my God, you have to help me narrow it down a little bit, So it really, you see the skill, you see the technique. And I always have them make 2 of the same dish. Because I look for consistency. If it's 2 steaks, are they cooked both medium rare?
Yeah.
Or is one well, one rare? It's like, so consistency is important. But yeah, go in the walk-in, you get 2 hours, make me whatever you want. And I've had food all over the place, But again, good is good. It's like I can teach you our recipes, but can I teach you seasoning? Can I teach you technique? Can I teach you time management? Those are things I look for.
I love watching like the behind the scenes, like the Iron Chef. I love it because I just love seeing them all working and the chef giving instructions and the sous chef doing all the stuff. That, and I always want to see what it's like behind the scenes when a football team's preparing to play another team.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same type of thing in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what we do in like pre-meal every day at 4:30. We grab the whole entire kitchen, all the staff. We go over specials. What are the oysters tonight? What do we have? What do we don't have? What do we want to work on tonight? We have this great special. Let's try to, whoever sells the most gets a bottle of wine, like really incentive, and let's talk about service. And I think it's kind of the same with the football team. They just really talk it out and have a game plan.
Nice. So when are you planning to open the next restaurant?
I think next year I'll probably be refreshed, and then I'll open another one. I mean, I opened a lot quick. I opened 2 restaurants in 1 year. That's a lot. That really buckled me a lot. I mean, it's when you open a restaurant, when you first open a restaurant, you are working 20-hour days for months. You know? So, and when I opened Butterbird, the funny thing is it's a little tiny takeout place. It requires the same amount of effort, the same amount of work, the same amount of discipline, and we do breakfast. So I had to go in at 6 a.m. and work till 9 o'clock at night. It makes for really long days. And my wife is like, oh, you're opening another restaurant. You're MIA for a bit because it just requires so much time to do it well.
I gotta check out Butterbird.
Yeah.
Heard great things.
Is it different? I wonder, out in this area versus somewhere like Florida where the weather's always consistent, so you're always like you're not relying on a nice day, or where out here it's like shit, it's gonna snow.
Yeah.
You're gonna get
Well, I mean,
less
even
people.
Watertown versus Boston, I notice a huge difference. Watertown is very weather driven. If it's nice out, we're super busy. If it's rainy and windy, we're a little slower.
Yeah.
Like it's really driven by the weather. So I do think that I'm like, in Florida, is it just busy every day? You know,
Yeah.
because our summer is monumentally more busy than our dead of winter. Of course, like who wants to go out in January when it's 10 degrees out? You choose to stay home. But when it's 80 and you can sit on a beautiful patio, it's like, of course, things
And
change.
then depending where the restaurant is
Right.
too. Like if you're in a, touristy
Yeah.
area, you're gonna get a little more.
There's
than,
a lot of like, I don't know if the word science is, but there's a lot of things that I think of. Like I had a restaurant that didn't have a patio, and then I opened a restaurant with a patio. I was like, oh my God, we're so much busier. Now I will never open a restaurant without a patio. I used to have small bars. Now I will never open a restaurant with a small bar because people love bars and bars are always busy, So as I grow and open more restaurants, I just learn and I just evolve and I give them what they want. Because, I mean, the restaurant business, as you know, changes so much.
Yeah.
You got to change with the times or the times are going to change you, And I on Bar Rescue, noticed that a lot too. This was great 20 years ago. Well, 20 years ago, that was great. Now it's not so great. So you have to constantly evolve and just keep your hand on the pulse.
Melissa said that they recorded what was that show?
Love is Blind.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. This weekend? Yeah, I talked to her this morning.
Yeah. Love is Blind.
Yeah.
So what did they call you and they say, hey, we're gonna film in there?
Yeah, I had an acquaintance for the production company who I worked with on Hell's Kitchen, and they said, hey, we're filming in Boston. Would you be open to having one of your restaurants? I never saw the show. I've heard of it. I know it's a big show, but I've never watched it, so I had to sort of get the lowdown on it.
Yeah.
And then come to find out, people are going nuts about it. Like, even Melissa was just like, oh, my God, it's the best thing. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so they just said, can we film at Buttermilk? And I said, sure. And pretty small crew, and apparently they go on dates, and they just film the date in the restaurant.
Yeah, it's two people who... Is that the one that you get
I think they
married
fall in
with them?
love or something through a screen or
Yeah.
something.
They don't see each other, and then you get engaged. If things go well, you get engaged, and then you automatically move into an apartment together, and and then they film it all from when you meet, and you spend all this time behind a wall.
Yeah, they don't. I think they don't call it a show. They call it an experiment.
Yeah, an experiment. Yeah, exactly.
An experiment that's going to fail.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think some people. I think if I heard correctly, some people after 10 days get married.
Yeah, something like that.
And then, please,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those dating shows.
They're so stupid because even if you do find someone that you match up with, right? You have to realize that one of these days, those cameras are going to be gone. And then it's just you guys living life together.
Yeah.
And it's like a job. I say to my kids, I go, whatever field you're looking to get into, you're looking at all the highlights of it. Go intern experience, see if you can deal with the day-to-day BS
Right.
and the crap days.
You got to come. The highs are great, but the lows are low, and that's why they're called that.
Yeah. And it's the same with relationships. So how did you meet your wife?
It's funny. Someone just asked us the other night. It's not a great story. I think it's fine. My wife doesn't love it, but I met her at a nightclub, and we kind of
right.
came home with me, and the rest is history. And she hates it. I'm like, well, we can lie and come up with something like I saved your dog or something,
Yeah.
But that's it. We had sort of mutual friends. We were out at a nightclub, and we connected and been together 10 years.
You went out in the same friend group, or you saw her across?
No,
and you were
I mean
like,
at the
"Damn."
time, because I was into so much house music and stuff, I was a big club guy for a bit, and so we had mutual friends. We weren't there with mutual friends, but it was my in, and she was like really beautiful to me and fun, and she was in med school at the time, and it just sort of clicked, and It's funny because our families are so different, It's crazy. They are like stereotypical Asian, hyper disciplined. I mean, if I had half the discipline as my wife, she will run every single morning. She could have a fever. She'll still get up and run every single day. And she's so disciplined and structured. And I'm like, it's cloudy out. I won't go for a walk. There's a good show on TV. I won't do this. But her family are just hardcore and like, it's funny because I think there's some truth to the stereotypicalness, but they're not very, like my family's like, thank you, oh my God, this is amazing, this is great. Her family's like, but did you die? Like they're just so kind of short, not, my family's like, oh, participation trophy, you're doing great, anything you do is great. They're like, her cousin, when I first started dating her cousin would be like, you're fat. I was like, they literally said to my face, you're fat. And I was like, cool, nice to meet you. You know, they're harsh. They're just like that.
Yeah.
You know, like
So-
she grew up. She would say her dad was like very stern and kind of cold. You know, now we have a daughter. My father-in-law is a mush. You know, he's all, and she's like, she never showed me that love when I was a kid. You know, it's very different.
Yeah.
How they are. You know, Asians are funny.
So how was it when your families met?
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, because I've like come from the whitest background ever, and they're not. You know, her family are from Vietnam. They came here. Her brothers and sisters are like, you know, they were all born here, no accents or anything, but they still grew up in the culture.
Yeah.
My family, it's like Irish white people. You know, we eat meat and potatoes and watch TV. You know, and they're just not like that. So it was definitely weird at first and very uncomfortable.
Yep.
But now our families have melded so great together. We all went out. There was 11 of us went out for dinner on Sunday night for my birthday. And it was like, so I just sat back and I was like, this is so bizarre, but yet so cool at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, I love her family. I'm so lucky because you hear all these mother-in-law stories and her
Yep.
family's fantastic.
It's so funny because like on TV, whenever they show like interracial relationships, they always show more like, oh, how's it going to be when the white family meets, you know, the minority or whatever. Listen, it's the opposite. It's more, I'm sure with you guys,
Yeah.
it was more when her family met you.
Oh,
It was-
100%. They're
yeah.
like, who's this blue-haired white guy in our house, you know? My wife was born, they left Vietnam, and my wife was born on a boat on the way to the United States.
No.
Was born technically, she was born in the Philippines.
So she's Filipino from like, if you go by
Yeah,
like.
I mean, by law, I mean,
yeah.
obviously she's a citizen now, and they
Yeah.
all grew up here. But yeah, it's really funny because they're like, you know, they're 100% Americanized, no accent. You know, they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
white people, you know.
Yeah.
But her family, they all speak with broken English, and everything is tradition. And there's like, you know, the Dalai Lama and all these things are in their house,
Yeah.
and you bow and you pray and all this. And when we moved in our house, her mom made me bring in 2 gallons of water and a bucket of rice because that's like good luck. And they're into all this kind of stuff, you know. And then my wife's like a little bit in the middle, like a little bit more like, okay, but still is very respectful to the culture.
And when you would hear like them talk to your wife in Vietnamese, you're like, they're shit talking me.
Oh,
I know they
100%.
are.
It still happens. It's still because I've obviously picked up a few words.
Yeah.
And then they'll get done talking. I said, "What did you just say about me?" You know, because I know you're talking shit. You know.
It's so funny because my wife, like from when she met me, she immediately went to my family. She's like, I want to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
And they were basically like, all right, trial by fire. And just, it's almost like if you just got dropped into the other country, you're going to learn it by accident.
Right.
So now she know, like to the point where she's a real estate attorney. She'll do first time home buyer seminars for people who do not speak only in Spanish.
Amazing.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't speak Spanish as well as my wife does. So now it's funny because, you know, people will, if someone who speaks Spanish is, you know, it's like her first time meeting, maybe like a friend of the family. Not my entire family knows her, but it could be the first time meeting a friend of the family. God forbid they go to say something about her
Oh yeah.
in Spanish.
Yep.
She'll be like, I know exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And she'll respond. She did it one time. She responded. My wife is 14 years younger than me. My mother introduced her to a friend. And as she's shaking my wife's hand in Spanish, she was like, well, she's pretty young. And she said, and my wife responded, but I'm mature.
Yeah. Well, my wife's 11 years younger than me, so
Oh, really?
You know, like I'm closer to her like dad's age. You know, it's kind of funny, but it's you know, same thing. We have a nanny that stays with us 3 days a week, and she's Vietnamese. And I say not a word of English. I mean, literally, you say hello, and she's like, huh? You know, so. But I still know when she's talking about me. You know, you just pick up the mannerisms and stuff. Like, what'd you just say about me? You know, it's so funny.
I have a prediction for you.
Yeah.
I think I'm saying it now. I'm gonna be the first one to say it. I think Jason Santos will be cooking in the Olympic Village when they come. And what, 2028? It'll be at Gillette.
Is that when they're coming here?
Yeah, aren't they doing like North America the next time?
I know. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I thought it was L.A.
I thought they're doing North America in the Olympics. It's gonna be like USA, Mexico, and Canada.
Really?
I'm not. unless I'm making this
No,
up.
I mean,
I
you
just
could
try.
be-
Yeah, I could have sworn. Yeah,
I was just thinking the next Olympics, I thought they were just like L.A. But
the Olympics
the Olympics, yeah.
in
well,
LA. Why would the Olympics be in LA?
Well, they just had the Olympics
In Paris.
in Paris.
The Winter Olympics,
The Winter Olympics? No,
right?
it was just the normal
Was it?
Olympics.
Oh, maybe you're right. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
it wasn't the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, and I just thought they said the next one's gonna be the 2028 games.
I mean, LA will probably be a stop,
yeah. Oh,
but
okay.
they're gonna do.
I
I know
just thought-
Gillette is on the.
Oh, okay,
It's
I
on the. It's on the thing. Yeah.
Because I just know I was like, because you know how Snoop and Martha Stewart and everything,
Yeah.
and I was like, why are they wasting Snoop in Paris? They should just, if they're gonna be going to LA in a couple of years, have him
Yeah.
be like the
Save it for that,
spokesperson
Yeah.
for that. So
it's
they
like
are gonna-
Mexico City, LA,
Really,
Toronto, Boston. Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, Hell's Kitchen, NBC. Like, I'm just like putting.
I mean, I would love to
that,
cook.
like,
I
you
was
know,
thinking
yeah.
more I should start training for the long jump, but
that would be a whole other
Yeah.
beast, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know you've done like cooking on shows and stuff, but that would be.
yeah,
That would be a cool
mass
thing for you
cooking
to
is its
tackle.
own
Yeah.
thing. It takes a special type of person to,
That'd be
to
cool,
able
though.
to do that. It would be cool. I'd be happy to do that.
I'd like to see a documentary on that too.
Yeah.
You get a camera crew.
yeah,
behind the
that's easy.
scenes. I'd
We
watch.
all get connections.
Well, okay, I'll watch on Peacock.
Yeah.
I'll stream.
I love it. All right, is there anything I should have asked you but I didn't, Jason?
No, I think we talked a lot. It's great. It's been really fun.
Awesome. All right, well, I can't wait for you to open the next restaurant, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jason Santos, where can people find out about you?
I mean, you could go to chefjasonsantos.com or chef.jasonsantos on Instagram, which I'm way more involved in, or any of the restaurants, Buttermilk and Bourbon, Citrus and Salt, Nash Bar, Butterbird.
Excellent. You have any questions for my friend?
I'll see you
Awesome.
at Butterbird one day.
Yes. See you in
Excellent.
the Olympics.
Thank
Yes.
you, Jason.